सबको सादर जय जिनेंद्र। और हमारे बीच में डॉक्टर कल्याण गंगवाल जो कि सीधे मुरैना पहुंच गए हैं। गुरुदेव का जो ज्ञान स्थली मंदिर बन रहा है वहां पर डॉक्टर गंगवाल हैं और साक्षात गुरुवर के दर्शन हमें करा रहे हैं। और हमारे बीच में दीप प्रज्वलन करेंगे आज साक्षात डॉक्टर कल्याण गंगवाल जो ज्ञान स्थली में पहुंचे हैं, गुरुवर के चरणों के दर्शन करा रहे हैं। मैं उनसे निवेदन करूंगा कि आज का दीप प्रज्वलन करके हमारे इस कार्यक्रम का विधिवत शुभारंभ करें और हम सब मिलकर 3 बार नमोकार मंत्र बोलेंगे साथ में। नमो अरिहंताणम, नमो सिद्धाणम, नमो आर्याणम।
पानी की गंगा बहाते चलो, आए जो दीने दुखी उनको गला से लगाते चलो, उनको गले से लगाते चलो। बोलिए केवल ज्ञान ज्योति की जय।
अरिहंताणम नमो
सिद्धाणम,
नमो आर्याणम, नमो वज्रायाणम, नमो नमो अरिहंताणम नमो
सिद्धाणम, नमो आर्याणम, नमो सवसाणम, नमो अरिहंताणम, नमो सिद्धाणम,
बोलिए केवल ज्ञान ज्योति
की जय हो। बोलो आचार्य ज्ञान सागर महाराज की जय हो। समस्त मुनि संघ की जय हो। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
झारखंड एवं पुरुलिया जिले से शराब बंधु आए हुए हैं, उनको भी आज यह सौभाग्य प्राप्त हुआ है। ज्ञान सागर फाउंडेशन के द्वारा जो कार्यक्रम होता है उसमें ऑनलाइन बोले परम पूज्य आचार्य रत्न श्री ज्ञान सागर जी महाराज
आज की जय हो।
परम पूज्य आचार्य श्री के सागर जी महाराज की बोले समस्त आचार्य संघ की।
मैं हमारे बीच में दो छोटी छोटी बच्चियां अन्वी और इशिता, उनसे निवेदन करूंगा कि आज के इस कार्यक्रम का मंगलाचरण करें। अन्वी और इशिता।
सभी को जय जी। साची तो गंगा यह वीतरागवाणी, अविछिन्न धारा निज धर्म की कहानी। साची तो गंगा यह वीतरागवाणी, अविछिन्न धारा निज धर्म की कहानी। जामे यदि ही विमल लगात ज्ञान पानी, जहाँ नहीं संशयादि पंक्ति की निशानी। साची तो गंगा यह वीतरागवाणी, अविछिन्न धारा निज धर्म की कहानी। सप्त भंग जहाँ तरंग उछलत सुखदानी, इंद्र में नित्य ज्ञान। साची तो गंगा यह वीतरागवाणी, अविछिन्न धारा निज धर्म की कहानी। जाके अब गाहन पे शुद्ध हुए प्राणी, जाके अब गाहन पे शुद्ध हुए प्राणी। भाग चंद ने हंचे घट माहिया प्रवाणी। साची तो गंगा यह वीतरागवाणी, अविछिन्न धारा निज धर्म की कहानी।
बहुत सुंदर अन्वी, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। और मैं कल्याण गंगवाल जी से निवेदन करूंगा कि वो हमको एक बार जो शराब उद्धारक हमारे गुरुदेव का जो सबसे बड़ा और सबसे इनिशियल प्रोजेक्ट था, वो शराब उद्धारक कहलाए हमेशा। और उन्होंने जो काम किया वो इन शराब बंधुओं को वापस एक जैन लोगों से जोड़कर वो एक बहुत इच्छनीय और हमेशा हमारे साथ रहने वाला कार्य है कि हमारे शराब बंधु हमारे जैन लोगों के बीच में आज इतना अच्छा कार्य भी अपने क्षेत्र में कर रहे हैं सब मिलकर। गुरुदेव का ये आशीर्वाद है कि जिनकी वजह से आज हम फिर शराब बंधुओं को अपने साथ जोड़कर, जो कि जैन कहलाते हैं और जैनिज्म को फॉलो भी करते हैं। आपको दीदी हमेशा बताती हैं कि वो ये शब्द भी यूज नहीं करते कि सब्जी को काटें। काटना मतलब उनके लिए अहिंसा है, वो सुधारना ही बोलते हैं हमेशा। तो इतनी बड़ी बात है। इनके नाम भी सबके भगवान 24 तीर्थंकर के भगवानों के नाम पर होते हैं। और ऐसी ऐसी जगह पे जहाँ कोई जा नहीं सकता था, हमारे गुरुदेव गए, उन्होंने इनको हमारे बीच में फिर से जोड़ा। मैं निवेदन करूंगा अनीता दीदी से 2 मिनट हमें उद्बोधन करके और शराब बंधुओं के बारे में भी बता के हमको कृतार्थ करें।
आपका नाम जी बोलिए। आप कुर्सी पर बैठोगे, कुर्सी पर बैठ के
थोड़ा डिफरेंस रखना
म्यूट करा।
एक फोन को म्यूट करना पड़ेगा। हाँ, हमारे बीच में आज के कार्यक्रम के अध्यक्ष सुहास जैन साहब भी जुड़ गए हैं। मैं उनका भी अभिनंदन करता हूँ।
जय जिनेंद्र।
जय जिनेंद्र। मैं अनीता दीदी से निवेदन करूंगा कि अपना हमको 2 मिनट का आशीर्वचन।
तरणी ज्ञान सागरे गुरु तारो मुझे ऋषि, करुणा करो करशे दो आशीष, यही प्रार्थना वीर से अनुनय से कर जो, पग पग पल पल बढ़े चलो मोक्ष महल की ओर, मोक्ष महल की ओर। बोलिए देवादिदेव 1008 श्री आदिनाथ भगवान की, बोलिए देवादिदेव 1008 श्री पार्श्वनाथ भगवान की, बोलिए विश्व वंदनीय देवादिदेव 1008 श्री महावीर भगवान की, बोलिए शांत मूर्ति आचार्य श्री शांति सागर छाणी महाराज की, बोलिए संत शिरोमणि आचार्य श्री विद्यासागर जी महाराज की, आचार्य श्री सुमति सागर जी महाराज की, बोलिए जन जन की आस्था के केंद्र साधना के सजग प्रहरी सराकोद्धारक षष्ठ पट्टाचार्य श्री ज्ञान सागर जी महाराज की, आचार्य श्री गे सागर जी महाराज की, समस्त आचार्य संघ की। क्या कहूँ, आज का दिन और कल का दिन हम सभी के लिए बहुत भारी भारी लग रहा है, इसलिए कि जो कार्य अभी नहीं होना था वह कार्य कैसे हो गया। यूं तो विधि का विधान क्या लिखा हुआ था ये हमारे और आपके ज्ञान का विषय नहीं था, पर रह रह करके परम पूज्य आचार्य रत्न श्री ज्ञान सागर जी महाराज श्री की स्मृतियां हर किसी के मानस पटल पर उभरती रहती हैं। चूंकि पूज्य गुरुदेव ने जो कार्य किए हैं इतिहास उसे कभी भुला नहीं सकता है। चाहे बुद्धिजीवी वर्ग के कार्यक्रम हो, चाहे 95 जेलों में जाकर के उन कैदियों को संबोधित करने के कार्यक्रम हो, चाहे कोर्ट कचहरी पुलिस लाइन यूनिवर्सिटी मेडिकल कॉलेज और स्कूलों में छात्र छात्राओं को संबोधित करने का अवसर हो, निश्चित रूप से परम पूज्य आचार्य रत्न श्री ज्ञान सागर जी महाराज श्री के विषय में कुछ भी कहना सूर्य को दीपक दिखाने जैसा है। आप अभी सभी देख रहे थे झारखंड एवं बंगाल प्रांत से आए हुए सराक बंधुओं को जो पूज्य गुरुदेव के प्रथम समाधि दिवस पर श्रद्धा सुमन समर्पित करने आए हैं। वास्तव में पूज्य गुरुदेव ने एक इतिहास लिखा है और ऐसे क्षेत्र में जाकर के जब 93 में सराक बाहुल्य क्षेत्र के तड़ाई ग्राम में चातुर्मास किया था, तब एक इतिहास लोगों के सामने आया था जहां पर कोई सुख सुविधाएं नहीं थी, रहने को पक्के मकान नहीं थे। इन सराक बंधुओं ने 93 में उस चातुर्मास के मध्य खेत खलियानों के बीच में घास फूस से निर्मित झोपड़ी की थी और जब पूज्य गुरुदेव उस झोपड़ी में बैठ करके ध्यान किया करते थे, ऐसा लगता था मानो साक्षात चतुर्थ काल का कोई संत सामायिक में लीन है, ध्यान में लीन है। पूज्य गुरुदेव के व्यक्तित्व कृतित्व को ना चित्रकार की चित्र और ना कवि की कविताएं और ना लेखक की रचना और ना ही वक्ता के शब्द पूर्ति कर सकते हैं। फिर भी आज ये सराक बंधु जिनको पूज्य गुरुदेव ने नई राय दिखाई, अभी सौगानी जी साहब बोल रहे थे कि आज भी इनके घरों में ये संस्कार है, अगर कोई भोजन बनाते समय यह कह दिया करता है लौकी के टुकड़े कर दो, केला काट दो, तो हिंसावाची शब्दों का प्रयोग जब होता है तो वह सब्जियां यूज नहीं किया करते हैं। जिनके गोत्र तीर्थंकरों के नाम पर है, आदिदेव, ऋषभ देव आदि आदि, तो निश्चित रूप से ऐसे सराक बंधुओं के प्रति हम सभी के अभिभाव जुड़ना चाहिए। जुड़ो और जोड़ो, इस वाक्य को हम सभी आत्मसात करते हुए पूज्य गुरुदेव के द्वारा सराक क्षेत्र में जो कदम उठाए गए हैं उन कदमों को हम मंजिल तक ले जाने का प्रयास करें, तभी पूज्य गुरुदेव के प्रति सच्ची श्रद्धा आस्था हमारी और आपकी होगी। इस अवसर पर सराक बंधुओं से भी मेरा यही कहना है कि पूज्य गुरुदेव ने आप सभी को जो संस्कार दिए हैं उन संस्कारों को आप हमेशा प्रज्वलित रखें और गांव-गांव में, घर-घर में पूज्य गुरुदेव के प्रति अपनी श्रद्धा भक्ति समर्पित करें। वास्तव में आज भी चाहे वो बंगाल प्रांत हो, झारखंड प्रांत हो, उड़ीसा प्रांत हो, ये सराग बंधु अपने अपने घरों में और जहाँ चैत्यालय बने हुए हैं उन चैत्यालयों में जाकर के भगवान की आरती और पूज्य गुरुदेव की आरती किया करते हैं, जय जयकार लगाते हैं। पर एक ही शब्द इनके मुख से निकल रहे हैं कि दीदी जी ये क्या हुआ, हमारे भगवान जो सराकों की भगवान जाने जाते थे, सराकों की राम कहे जाते थे, सराकों की मसीहा के नाम से प्रसिद्ध थे, कहाँ चले गए हमारे गुरुदेव हम सबको अधर में छोड़ करके। तो निश्चित पूज्य गुरुदेव ने जो हम सबको रास्ता दिखाया है, जीवन जीने की कला सिखाई है, उस कला से हम अपने जीवन को अच्छी तरह से जिएं और पूज्य गुरुदेव का सतत स्मरण करते हुए उनके आदर्शों पर चलने का प्रयास करें, तभी हमारी सच्ची श्रद्धा आस्था होगी। कल श्री दिगंबर जैन ज्ञान तीर्थ क्षेत्र पर दोपहर में 1 बजे से प्रथम समाधि दिवस का कार्यक्रम होगा, जिसमें डॉक्टर जी कल्याण जी, डॉक्टर नलिन के शास्त्री आदि आ रहे हैं और भी अनेक स्थलों के श्रद्धालु श्रद्धा सुमन समर्पित करेंगे। आप सभी भी ऑनलाइन जुड़ करके इस कार्य को अटेंड कर सकते हैं। इन्हीं भावनाओं के साथ बोलिए परम पूज्य आचार्य रत्न श्री ज्ञान सागर जी महाराज की, समस्त आचार्य संघ की।
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद दीदी। आपने बहुत सही कहा और मैं यही कहूँगा कि आत्मा का बंधन, प्यार का बंधन आत्मा से है और वो कभी नहीं छूटता। और हमारे गुरुदेव ये मतलब ऐसा बंधन निराला है कि कितने भी आघात आ जाएं वो कभी टूटेगा नहीं। हमारे बीच में आघात जरूर आया, ज्ञान सागर महाराज जी का शरीर हमारे बीच से चला गया, लेकिन वो हमारे हर आत्मा, जितने भी मैं कहता हूँ ज्ञान सागर साइंस फाउंडेशन के मेंबर हैं, सब ऑल लर्नेड हैं और उनकी आत्मा में गुरुदेव बसे हुए हैं। जो भी मैंने देखा है आज तक, उससे इतना ही महसूस किया है कि हर हमारे जो बीच में साइंटिस्ट हैं या और लोग हैं, बुद्धिजीवी लोग हैं, सबके दिलों में वो बसे हुए हैं और वो कभी अलग हो नहीं सकते। जब तक, अब तो निर्वाण प्राप्त करेंगे, कभी हम गुरुदेव के साथ स्वर्ग में जाएंगे या निर्वाण को प्राप्त करेंगे, तभी गुरुदेव हमसे अलग हो सकते हैं। ऐसी भावनाओं के साथ मैं आज के अध्यक्ष हमारे सुहास जैन साहब और प्रोफेसर विमल जैन साहब से निवेदन करूंगा कि वो प्रोफेसर सुहास जैन साहब के थोड़ा सा इंट्रोडक्शन देके उनको आमंत्रित करें। फिर वो आमंत्रित करेंगे हमारे आज के स्पीकर डॉक्टर पीटर फ्लूगल, जो हमारे बीच में ऑलरेडी जुड़ चुके हैं और मैं उनका भी बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद करता हूँ। प्रोफेसर विमल जैन।
धन्यवाद संजीव एंड सबको हमारा जय जिनेंद्र।
जय जिनेंद्र।
It's my honor to introduce chairperson of today's session, Dr. Suhas Saha. He is orthopedic surgeon and head of department at Bhava Hospital, a super hospitality in Russian surgery. Attached to Jaslo, he is attached to Jaslo, Wokhad, and Raheja hospitals. Brati and 2 Pratimadhari, Maran Chikitsik, and he is expert in Prachin Ayurvedic therapy. At present, he is pursuing his doctorate degree, PhD in Ayurveda. And with these few words, I request Dr. Shah to chair the session. Dr. Shah, please.
सबको जय जिनेंद्र, गुड इवनिंग। ये मेरा सौभाग्य है परम पूज्य ज्ञान सागर मुनि महाराज जी के संदर्भ में हम सब जुड़े हैं, आज के हमारे वक्ता के बारे में मैं 2 शब्द कहूंगा. Sir, it is my honor to introduce you as a renowned Jaina scholars and fine academician, Professor Peter Flugel, for this evening lecture series in the honor of our revered Gurudev, Acharya Gyan Sagarji Maharaj. Professor Flugel is a scholar of Jainism at the School of Oriental and African Studies at the University of London and chairs the Center of Jaina Studies. He is a very prolific writer and he has published numerous articles and books on different aspects of Jainism. I can remember 3 books have appeared this year, and Professor Flugel has published extensively on the history, anthropology, and sociology, and of the contemporary Jain schools and sects, Jain relic stupas, Jain Vaishnava syncretism, and on the social, political, and legal history of the Jain tradition. He is also working on questions of comparative philosophy, pluralism, and non-violence. He is the editor of the International Journal of Jain Studies. He is a co-editor of Jaina Studies newsletter of the Center of Jaina Studies and a series of editor of Advances in Jaina Studies. He is working on Jainism for last 32 years. And his recent project, Jaina Prosopography, is a very significant to understand Jain sadhu and their relationship and their relations. His recent book on Jain temples in Madhya Pradesh is under progress. Sir, we are very pleased and honored that this evening you will discuss on Jaina tradition and the Jaina prosopography project. I humbly request Professor Flugel for the lecture. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for your kind introduction, Dr. Suhas Shah. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Thank you. Your
Very
voice
good.
is good. Yeah.
May I request Dr. Sugani Sanjeev to allow screen share?
Yeah.
Yes. Well, it's a great honor to be invited on this auspicious day when the Samadhi of Gyan Sagar Maharaj is being inaugurated to deliver this lecture. I met Gyan Sagarji only once when in the company of Sanjeev we went to a small village near Jaipur, and we met him, and it was a very inspiring meeting for me. Because we had been in touch for many years before, but never had the opportunity to meet. But very sadly, a year later, he passed away unexpectedly in full bloom. And I was extremely sorry to hear that. But I hope his vision will survive, and his work is going to be pursued by his devotees. So I have been asked to present something on our latest research project, or one of our projects. We have a number of projects. One is related, 2 are related to Digambaras directly. I can see that Dr. Kirit Gosalia is with us. And one of the projects is on Kanji Swami and his tradition. And we have a couple of PhD students coming up working on this. One actually already working on this. Another is a project on Digambar Jain temples in Madhya Pradesh, or rather Bundelkhand, you can say, in Gopak Kshetra. This region, and we're documenting the history of the temples, and some of which are in the process of being swamped by new dams. So I thought it's very urgent work to document the heritage of the Gamba tradition in this area, and something is coming up there. Now, last but not least, this is a long-term project which I'm introducing now to you. And some of you have heard of it already on Jain Prosopography. And this is a project which will take, I think, about 10 years, depending on the level of support which we receive. And it's going on already in a way for about 8 years, because there was some preliminary research, but this particular line of work has started 4 years ago. We had a research project on which I will report, and on our ongoing work in this field. Of course, the first question you will ask, what is prosopography? I've never heard about that word. It comes from the Greek, and it basically means a description of person. You can say in brief, it's personal history. However, it is not biography as such, the way in which we are pursuing it with the help of a database, but it is a collective biography. It's the investigation of historical information on a whole group of people on which otherwise not much is known. And to interconnect, to link the data on these persons with modern computer technology. Just to give you an example right now, in Jain inscriptions, you find a lot of information on historical personalities of the Jain tradition, but only very few types of data are given, such as Pratishta, who has donated an image and which monk has consecrated that image, and so on. Otherwise, not much information is given. So you can say 80%, if not more, let us say 95% of Jain history is in that form. There's snippets and fragments distributed all over India in the form of inscriptions which are being collected, and many of those have been published, colophons of manuscripts, information on the scribe and his genealogy and so on. So Jain history, the sources for Jain history are fragments which have to be pieced together. It's a big puzzle. And our project, phase 1, has developed a tool, a database, which will help to put these pieces together and to complete the puzzle, and has developed taxonomy and methodologies, which I will introduce now. So what we really want to know, and what everyone wants to know who is interested in history, and history, of course, informs us of how we got here, who we are. And it's very important. It's not just the ancient past, but it tells us something about ourselves. So these are the standard questions: who, what, when, where, why, how. Anyone who has any interest in history will ask these questions. And you can see there are a number of different fields here associated with the broad field of historical studies, which I'm focusing on in the context of this project. First of all, personal history. The main method is biography. Of course, there are not many fully written biographies of individuals. Even of Mahavira's biography, we hardly know anything. Not to speak of the donors of Jain images, or the monks who performed Pratishta. Family history, again, very little is known the further back we go. but certain fragments are transmitted here and there. So this is the genealogical method you are familiar with, and dynastic history, the history of kings, rulers, and so on. Of course, it uses the genealogical method as well in the main. And now I put in collective biography next to social history and religious history, because collective biography is an alternative expression for prosopography. I mean, this is what it's really all about. To connect individual biographies and piece together through this lens the history of the whole tradition. And of course, you can subdivide this in the field of Jaina studies, study the religious history of the Digambaras or some other sub-tradition. And we're talking about a time period, let us say, of at least 1,000 years. We have good historical, relatively good historical sources for the last 1,000 years on Jain history. The time before that is less well documented. Of course, we can find bits and pieces down to, say, the time of Mathura and the Hattikumfa inscription and so on. But this is sketchy information. So we're collecting information on people, places, events, texts, and we produce statistics, mapping, and basic visualization tools we provide for everyone who wants to use the data which is really available. So the aim of this project is to study the social history of Jainism through collective personal history for at least the time where good information is available. Now, what is the prosopographical methodology? I point you to the wiki pages from which I put these quotations, pulled them. And
recording in progress.
That gives you the basic information on the methodology of studying collective biography. Important is this statement on this page: a certain mass of data is required for prosopographical research. It is very important to highlight this point. The statistical and visualization tools that we provide, and we are a cutting-edge project. There's no such project otherwise on the way in South Asian studies. We are in the process of collecting data over the last 4 or 5 years. And we have reached a good amount, but it is by way not enough to harvest the fruits of this innovative method. But that allows us to understand patterns and relationships by analyzing the data. And of course, we don't do all the analysis. We just provide the tools and the data. So anyone is invited to use them and make the best of this. So what are the sources? A few more details here. As members of the Jain communities, you are very well familiar with all these data related to chronological and biographical events and data. So here are some of the traditional sources that are analyzed in the broader prosopography project. So we use biographical poems. There is information in there. They have been collected by people such as Desai on Gurjar Kavyos. And of course, we have songs and Gurvavalis and Patavalis, which have been collected. And as I said, inscriptions. We don't actually study these things directly, but we use the published materials. And there's a huge body of work done in India in the main that is available. But these are puzzle pieces which have to be put together. And the material is so vast, without computers, no progress, substantial progress can be made there. So here you can see the research process. First of all, in modern research across the world, first of all, manuscripts and inscriptions, etc., i.e. text, had been collected. They were then printed. And this is all still going on, of course. It's by no means finished. And we are now at a stage where databases are being produced. For instance, there are many temple libraries in India or other libraries, public libraries, who are digitizing their holdings. They scan the manuscripts, and they also produce electronic library catalogs. Usually these are just lists, but they're very helpful, and potentially, if pulled together and made searchable, there would be perfect material for prosopographical analysis. The problem is, of course, vast. You know, there are different formats, different levels of granularity. I'm sorry, i.e., some just give a title and a year, and others give, the whole lot of bibliographical detail a research library would require. So this looks innocent here, but this is a vast effort to create proper databases, which are just not just collect material and present it, but present it in such a way that one can actually work with the material further, i.e., produce quantitative analysis and so on. And this is not just statistics, this also relates to the contents. I recommend, of course, the wonderful work that has been done by Praveen Shah in America with Jain Quantum. He has started many years ago to scan published works in all kinds of Indic and international languages on Jainism. And now it is searchable, this material, through this Jain Quantum technology. Of course, what you find are, again, just snippets, i.e. you put in a name in, say, Gyan Sagar, and then you see what comes out. It doesn't give you the whole story. You have to create the story out of these snippets, but at least the data is in this particular form available. Prosopographies are systematized data. They are already processed data, not just individualized pieces of information. So just to show you, there's a lot of material on proper names that goes back to the 19th century. Again, these are just lists. There are no interconnections available. Biographical information on historical Jaina monks, Jaina monks and nuns, and Jainas, their supporters as well. This is just a fraction of what is available. In a way, these are the most important, or some of the most important collections. Here, Anupam Jain, who is amongst our audience, I think, he published this wonderful collection of information on contemporary Digambara sadhus and sadhvis. I only have 2 issues, but this type of fundamental information is the bedrock for all further work. You are probably familiar with this work by Satish Kumar Jain, who in 1983, I think, he gave me personally this copy. So I'm more than 32 years involved in this whole business. So in the Jain community is producing collective biographies itself, as you very well know. So in this form, short biographical data on modern individuals have been collected, and there are similar collections on historical personalities, but they're all in the form of lists. One person, next person, next person. They're not connected. Even if you want to find out the family relationships between them, it would not be easily possible. And for monks and nuns, more information is available historically. But again, as the example of Mahavira tells us, there's actually not much known, and you have to piece the bits and together to get a more complete picture. So nowadays, this is technologically no problem. I mean, everyone knows how the internet works, and prosopographical database is not much different. And so you can study the networks across different dimensions according to your taxonomy. And it is not, you can't do it statistically at random, through internet data, because you want structured information for certain purposes, not just a lump of, endless lists of data. So you have to create subcategories here in abstract marked by different colors. And I took this from the internet, but our data look fairly similar. And you can see clusters and then zoom in and analyze them. So these can be presented dynamically as well. Usually this link doesn't work or eats up too much time, so I don't present it to you. There is a paradigm. This is a China biographical database. If you have the time, I recommend visiting it. This is a project going on for more than a decade, and it has a more limited taxonomy than ours, actually, but quantitatively it is vast and leading in the field, and a very interesting paradigm. Historically, this all goes back to the research on the Roman Empire. There's so many inscriptions, fragments that needed putting together. And these scholars here have started this project. And here you can see the project ended in 2015 after more than 100 years officially. I think we can be quicker, but of course we need support. The Roman data are much bigger, of course, than the Jain data. This explains in part why it took so long. The methodology of this project is you can see on the internet. You just have to follow the links here on my article on sociology of Jain names. Gives you all the background. There is some background noise. Maybe you could take it out. Yes, thank you. So these are the primary sources.
Please mute. Someone is on mute actually, so please mute. Please continue.
So these are the primary data that have been collected in the texts which I presented, in certain collections of manuscripts, manuscript colophons, inscriptions on different media, At the moment, we work, for instance, on inscriptions on these bronzes in Ahmedabad, which Parikh had published a few years ago, 800, almost 900 inscriptions of this type. It's very useful historical information, and I'll show you the result of this in a second. In Indology, there is a lot of history of this work, the production of indexes of books involved this work, and of coding and so on. And people familiar with all this are building on the work on giants like Albrecht Weber, a person probably not known to many of you, but he actually started Jain studies as an academic field, you may say, because he received a collection of Jain manuscripts from which were bought in India, duplicates by Georg Bühler, who worked for Pune Deccan College, and before that he worked for Bombay, Elphinstone College, and so on. And so these manuscripts had to be catalogued, and they were totally new and unknown in Europe at the time, the Jain scriptures. And he and his team, one of his students was Hermann Jacobi, they established through comparison with Buddhist texts that Jainism was not a sect of Buddhism or Hinduism, but a separate tradition. And he published for the first time large extracts of, admittedly, mainly the Shvetambara Agamas, and produced a huge catalogue of Jain manuscripts. And the first text book on Jaina scriptures. And that was published in translation belatedly in Calcutta as well. It's hardly known because few copies have been disseminated. In any case, so the index is about 200 pages, and it has a certain scheme of analyzing colophons, which I'm not going into, but it all influences the way in which modern prosopographical work on Jain materials is being conducted. Another student of Weber, apart from Jacobi, Leumann, and so on, was Johannes Klatt. I found the manuscript of Johannes Klatt's magnum opus, the Jaina Onomasticon at Hamburg University, unpublished. And we had a research project in getting this work published. It is 1,000 pages, a labor of love of this man who died untimely because of an illness. He died with 52, at the age of 52, after spending many years in hospital. So he could not complete the publication of this very, very important work on Jaina names of persons, of places, of texts in the main. And now you can actually use it, not least because all of the data, the historical data, I must say a good selection of them, it's not the entire book, has been incorporated into the Jaina prosopography database. And we had to make a selection. We took only information that related to historical person and not we left out mythological and so on information. So the prosopography, for instance, uses a text here of one of the a bronze. You know, this is a transcribed text of Jaina bronze, which is in a museum. And Klatt published that translation. So we analyzed it in the prosopography project. Here's a date, and then there are different people mentioned. there's an action, an event, and objects are mentioned. And of course, is here a place? No, but there is always a lay people, an acharya, and information on the monastic tradition the person belonged to. It is, of course, for lay people, one can never give exactly which tradition they belong to because they can change allegiance. So the gacha is basically monastic term, gana, gacha, etc. So in this way, information is extracted from this kind of data and presented by Clut with this kind of scheme: name, birth date, birthplace, father, mother, gotra, and jati, given name, and initiation, place, initiator, acharya, accomplishments, books, vihara, date of death, and so on, remarkable historic events. So all that information is can be aggregated from these snippets which we are given, so we get more complete information. And Clut did it by hand, and we do not just collect information with our database on individual persons, but also on the relationships between these people. And that is what Clut does not give. And of course, his data are more than 100 years old and by no means complete. Okay, so moving on, I want to, because time is not endless, I want to present some of the results of the database, which you can see here. And let me switch to the database, which I opened here. So it looks like that. And there are a number of things you can see here, but let me just type in a name. So I searched this monk, and I mean, he's connected with a number of other monks which automatically pop up, but the visual representation can be improved, but it's just about the data that has been collected from different sources, mainly Clut, Kapadia, Parikh, who I mentioned on the Ahmedabad inscriptions. And here, for instance, you can see researchers or anyone interested in Jain history can use these data for free. Here, we have about 12,000 individuals covered here. You can scroll through them. And here, this is just one of the visualizations of his network and members of his monastic group. And you can click on these things, and then all these networks continue and can be further expanded. But we need more visualizations, so users can see the data in many ways and investigate them. This goes on and on. It's not so. You can see how one can play around with these data. There are maps, and why is it not coming? I don't know. It's here. Well, there are different statistics. Let us say denomination. so there are different levels of religious groups. And here you can just see that most of the material at the moment relates to the Shvetambras and much less to the Digambras. Most of it comes from Klat. And one of our aims is to increase the amount of Digambra material to get a more balanced picture. And of course, Gyan Sagar was trying to help us with this, maybe. We are lobbying, I'm lobbying in India for members of the Digambra tradition to support work to be done on Digambra materials. And the same with gender. You can see that most of the material relates to males. So I'm trying to boost the data on females. As you know, most of the Jain monks and nuns are nuns, but they're totally underrepresented. And we have one researcher who is voluntarily working on this, who needs funding. She works on the book by Vijay Shri. She collected data on female mendicants, on nuns in the Jaina traditions. So we want to get the data into better shape, and there are certain areas that need to be improved. I mean, this is just, I mean, if you click on any of these bars, you get the whole list of the names. And let me show you sort of the inside workings of the database, i.e. the taxonomy, the way in which the data are classified and entered. I mean, that is a science in itself, and without training and Indological knowledge, one is not able to work with this. So I just show you, this is basically the result of the first phase of the research project, to create this database and to put the Klat data in. So we developed, in order to account for all the types of information in these sources, which I showed, we had to develop a coding system, which is basically using the categories used in the Jain tradition itself and enter the data accordingly. So, for instance, I mean, language, you see there are all kinds of languages that are found in our sources. And so this is the classification for languages. Sometimes texts are combined, of course. So we have, even for this, 47 categories. Then we have different Indian calendars and so on. What else is of interest, which can give you a quick impression? Let's say clan. This is Gotra. So these are Gotra names. And here, of course, we have many more. And you can search these, of course, individually. So we have, at the moment, 201 Gotras. And event types, we have genre types for literature, and so on. So these are genre types, and you can see, no, these are event types. You can see we have here, this is Hindi, but really it means Indic word, and here a general word, just to account for the fact that there are multiple names used in the sources for a particular type of event. What could I possibly, at the moment, nothing comes to donation, maybe. We can go to donation. For donation, usually one has well, here, for instance, you see death. In the sources, we have at the moment 3 expressions. So we don't, in other words, this is why I'm showing this, just impose, general categories in English onto the material, but we try to account for the original terms used in the text and then code them in such a way that they can be used for statistics, under the single term death, a number of different expressions are used. So in other words, we both preserve variation in the data and make them available for statistical analysis. And I mean, there's so many classifications. Altogether, we have, I think, more than 8,000 taxons, and these are about 40 general taxonomical categories. And remember, this applies also to works, literary works. And so, well, these are types of works, but yeah, anyway, I can show you this endlessly. So I just wanted to give you an impression how this looks from the inside a little bit. And yes. So they put it into context before I close. So there's the China database. There is a database. I mean, these are scientifically produced databases. They're not lists or, there is a great degree of care went into the construction of these for multiple purposes, for research, for family history, for, general information, multiple purposes. So here are a few others. I'm working here in London with Michael Willis, who has this wonderful database, a product of a European research project, resource for the study of inscriptions from South and Central Asia. And we try to integrate the two databases somehow. I mean, this is a data linkage issue. There's no overlap. I mean, these are raw data on the inscriptions, but we don't look at the raw data, we look at the contents and try to link them. It is utterly important, imperative to collaborate on a project like this. This potentially gives users the opportunity to look at the entire history of the Jaina tradition. If the published resources are analyzed and entered into this database, which has the potential to account for all the historical aspects that are recorded in the Jaina text and the various sources. And I think that a figure of 100,000 names will cover not everything, but a good chunk of the information that is available at all in print. At the moment, we have 12,000 names. And so the aim is to get to 100,000, and I probably underestimate the amount of names embedded in inscriptions and so on. But the main monks were the focus. They are and nuns that are definitely covered by this. So at the moment, we have certain sub-projects. So this is finished. This is going on. we are having a team of the Therapanthis working on this, but I try to build up and motivate people to use this tool and contribute to it. And this is nearly finished here. In Ahmedabad, we collaborated with the Gujarat University on this. And this is the project on Jain nuns and so on. But you will see, again, there's no project on the Digambar work. The late Nirmal Sethi was supporting it, but unfortunately he could not see it being realized. And I'm looking forward to his successor and talk to him. So these are the researchers, both in Europe and in India. And we have the closest collaborations at the moment with the Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute in Pune. And here, some of the researchers working on this. And I hope you forgive me to invite you to become enthused about this as well. And with this, I would like to close my little presentation and invite questions. Thank you.
So I would like to really thank you for excellent presentation and your extensive work on Jain history. Very thankful to see the peer view of the work you have done.
Yeah, if there are any questions, now you have the opportunity.
So I had one question. Hello.
Yes, please. Dr. Pukarna.
Yes, Swasha, please.
Just wanted to know how far in the history you have covered the names, basically from which year you have gone.
The oldest are BC, I think Bhadrabahu. I mean, Mahavira is in there. And I think he is the earliest.
Okay. So beyond that, you could not get any data or names?
Well, we left out non-Jain data. And we don't want to get involved into debates when Rishabha lived and so on. So we left this, we defined it as a mythological or religious data. We only look at historically verified data.
Okay.
Parshva is a borderline case because for him there is some information. And he lives, according to Jain dating, in a time period where he lived, which is still historical and not astronomical. Maybe you can remember, I can't, how many million years ago Rishabha was supposed to have lived. So this goes beyond the scope of our project.
Okay. So, but from Acharya Bhadrabahu, you could make a complete tree of the names of their all followers and munis.
Well, we would like to. Let me see. The work is, of course, rooted in the sources that are available.
Okay.
And we're not trying to judge right or wrong. We just make the data available. Let me put Bahu I can share again. Let us look. So we have 1, 2, 3 Bhadrabaus. Of course, there's not just one Bhadraabau that we know anyway. So we have one here, Veera somewhat 170, and 126 Vikram somewhat. So these are probably Bhadraabau, so-called Bhadraabau 1 and 2. And here are the disciples. I mean, we can look on the disciple here, Janadatta. And you see, everything is sourced. If you want to know, you can follow the links.
Okay.
We're not inventing matters. This is all based on sources. And I mean, this is just a visualization. The database is much richer than what is visualizable at the moment. And we need to have more investment into different visualization methods. And well, one can see how far it goes. You can investigate then as much as the database is fed with data, see these personal networks, but one can visualize network data also in different ways. And so this is Sambhuta Vijaya. For him, this network came up. And I exit this page now because there was some problem. So this is just one way of looking at the data, but this gives you an idea. So this is Sambhuta Vijaya. You can see he was the teacher of all these people here. And then you can continue investigating those. And as I said, the information is mainly from the Kalpa Sutra, I think, and from the inscriptions for some of those. Yeah. Well, that answers one of your questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Others who want to have questions with the permission of Dr. Suhas Jain. Dr. Surendra Pokharna, I think, is raising the hand. Please go ahead.
Welcome, sir.
Professor Frugal, I just want to congratulate you for wonderful work you are doing. It is beyond my imagination that so much work has been done and which is being representable in so many different ways using the modern technology and concepts. Actually, I am from Ahmedabad and we have started one Jain Academy of Scholars. And we have also started one Science and Spirituality Research Institute. So actually, we would like to, utilize and use some of the information which you have, so that actually our work can also proceed. And in case our members agree, then we would like to collaborate with you on some of the actually the topics on which we are doing research, because actually we also have some interest in the concept of Atma and consciousness, for example. So immediately we would like to know if you have information about who were the acharyas or other experts who have done work on this Atma and consciousness, for example, to be very specific. So it will be very good if you can provide some information about it to us.
Yes, it's a delight to hear about your work. The collaboration is very welcome. There are different issues here. One is historical research. And we can, with the help of this database, give information on literary sources related to Atma, let me say, Atma-related research. You know, by checking the titles and so on and so forth, and see who worked on it, and reconstruct lineages of people who, say, were in the line of Kunda Kunda or some person like that. You know, not necessarily just teacher-disciple, but also intellectual lineage that can be reconstructed through citation networks. So Kunda Kunda refers to, say, Simandra. I mean, this is just comes to my mind. Or Amrita Chandra refers to Kunda Kunda.
Yes.
So these links can be represented. And of course, straight teacher-disciple links as well. So as far as the content is concerned, you know, philosophy, that is, again, a different matter. And of course, our project, say, with Kirit Bai, that is mostly related to philosophy. You know, this Kunda Kunda's philosophy being interpreted by Kanji Swami. And so that goes beyond the scope of this kind of historical research.
Yeah.
Of course, there's a history of thought as well, but you cannot easily incorporate it or deal with it in a database format.
Yeah. So thank you very much. Thank you very much.
I have a comment on Professor Flugel's presentation. Dr. Flugel, you have done an amazing amount of work. Remember, I mean, in Indian system, and especially in Jainism, there are pockets of information all over the country. But then what you are trying to do is to put the hierarchy for all those things. And majority of the people involved and researchers and everything, they are more interested in philosophical aspect. And again, the original person, like Kunda Kunda or Amrit Chandra Acharya Dev, for example, they have not taken any liberty of presenting their personal life and everything. So that becomes kind of a unique situation for researcher like you to find really who was where, when, how, and all those things. Of course, informations are there, and what we have to do is, as Surendraji said, that we just have to collaborate and work together. It's the scope of work is immense. I mean, you know, in this lifetime, one puts the whole life to it. It may not be sufficient. And Clark and etc., when they did their work without computer, my hats are off to those researchers who did amazing amount of work. Now, of course, with the computer, we can do 1,000 times faster work and everything. But key word will be cooperation from everybody. And I think, you know, it is possible, like the platform like this, Gyan Sagar Jain Science Foundation platform, that there are intelligent people like Anupam ji and everybody over here, that they have done tremendous amount of work. We just have to sit down together and put it together and make a hierarchy of this work, and it will be amazing, amazing things, you know, really, really good. Congratulations, Dr. Flugel, for doing such a great job, you know.
Thank you. I just looked at Kunda Kunda, and the information is indeed very scant.
Yeah.
Because we have not had much input. These were sources mainly by Klatt. And remember, he stopped working 1892.
Mm-hmm.
And there's Dundas, there's some information here. I mean, any information that is, so here are all these texts are, of course, listed of Kunda Kunda. And it just gives you a broad overview of some of the raw data. And life dates is highly disputed when he actually lived, as you know. The dates vary between 2nd and 8th century or 9th century, which is amazing. And here you can see one date given is 7th century, and one is 49 Vikram Samvat. Is that right? So we have different dates. One says 69251, and this is BC. And here we have, and this is, I think, sort of the standard scholarly accepted date, you know, between 100 and, these are the life dates. So this is the dominant view at the moment, but it's totally disputed. And these are just two sources referring to other sources, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And that shows you, if you include more data, the picture becomes more differentiated, but the database doesn't judge. It just gives you the total links, and then researchers can make up their own mind and go further. It's a tool. It doesn't give all the answer. It gives you the range of answers available at the moment. And if you want to know the original data, then you have to look at these works and check their footnotes. And we have, of course, much data from Klatt, because this is the product of 2 research projects related to him. But we want to get more and more data, especially on inscriptions in India that have been collected by scholars, which I listed before. And as I said, Digambar material is underrepresented, and there are so many important works. Jorapurkara's work, for instance, is very important. And someone should work on that, for instance, and so on and so forth.
Thank you so much. Any other questions? Otherwise, I would. You know, I have one very small. It's very excellent work and amazing work, and really, you know, I heard that you have Samantabhadra also, and there are 5 Samantabhadra. And who has written Shavakachar, Ratnakaran Shavakachar? Can we find out the database with database also?
Yes, Samantabhadra. So there are 2. One is Digambara, and one we don't know, or the person that put the information in. I mean, obviously, you need highly educated people to be able to analyze the material and to enter it. It is not a clerical job. So this is what we have on Samantabhadra. This is the philosopher. 5th to 8th century, according to this data. And well, there's a birth location and author of all these texts. And he converted Shivakoti and was a contemporary of Kavi Parameshtin, predecessor of Pujapada. And well, there's information on the place. I wonder why the map didn't come. Sometimes there are bugs with these databases that have to be checked. But so Samantabhadra is there. The other Samantabhadra is we can have a look at that person. The big problem in history is that there are so many people of the same name, synonyms. And to disambiguate, there are many Kunda Kundas, there are many Mahaviras, many Samantabhadras. And here is a Pandit who lived about 600 Vira. And who is that? So we have some life dates here. Predecessor of Vidadeva. Well, if someone knows any of these people, so it's Digambara. So if all these can be related to the one, we have only one who is a Digambara here, according to the database. The others are not known as such in the raw data that were used. So with more information on these, it can be made clear who this Samantabhadra is, but we know for sure that he is not the philosopher Samantabhadra, the famous one, because all these texts here are associated only with him. And as I said, this is just one aspect of the database. I mean, you see here what can all be searched, you can search all Sangapatis, Shrestins, all Agavals, and so only 10 Agavals at the moment, or 16 written in two different forms. And so the data can be looked at from different perspectives. You can research events and sect. That is very interesting. If you go for the oldest, okay, here we have a birth date. You can see, you can answer the question. So we have our lowest birth day is 330 CE. Well, anyway, you can play around with this yourself because it's freely available online. I know as much as you do as far as all the data is concerned. I mean, I put in a few myself, but half of the data come from CLAT at the moment, and you can say a third comes from Ahmedabad, from these inscriptions, and the rest from Kapadia, the Pune catalogue, and Stanakavasi and Terapan sources in the main.
Yeah. So thank you so much. I think I would request, as Kirtibai said very nicely, that it's required more collaborative work, and it's a huge work which has to be done on this. And I would request Dr. Suhas Shah also finally to thank and how to support on this work. If something can be done from our side also as a Gyan Sagar Science Foundation. I personally feel that we should have something going on for Digambra's research and also for other colleagues' research. So it should be.
I really
Over to
thank
you.
Professor. Excellent work, and such a data will be very useful for other researchers to go through that and find out your work and historical work and historical background of our Acharya and their disciples. I doubt whether any site has got such extensive data. So we are very grateful for your presence in this webinar series and your lecture and your extensive work. We really thank from our heart for this. Thank you, sir.
Jai Jinendra, and tomorrow we will meet again for paying homage to our great Acharya Gyan Sagar Ji Maharaj. Sabko Sadar Jai Jinendra.
Jai Jinendra.
Jai Jinendra. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.